Hello, my name is Matthew Tobin, and this is HSCO-508. Today we're going to talk about how to prevent communication barriers in relationships. Physical barriers. We're going to talk about fatigue and time lag factor. Fatigue is a factor in listening since listening takes concentration and effort. When we don't feel up to par, we have a more difficult time being attentive. Time lag factor. It is easy to spend this time daydreaming, going on mental tangents and thinking of personal problems, visualizing what is being said, or concentrating on something already said. How to prevent communication barriers in relationships continued. Semantic barriers. It is about people, not words. Usually people do not purposely change what people say. They simply do not hear the same words in the same way that the words were said. Overarching goal. How this applied to my life. My overarching goal is to become a better listener and communicator. It helps me communicate better with my family, friends, and coworkers. It provides a better understanding of what is needed from me and in turn what I need from them. Overarching goals continue. How does this apply? Or how does this work? By practicing the 3 levels of listening. Using empathetic listening, refraining from hearing words but not really listening, and refraining from listening in spurts. The role of importance of interpersonal communication has 6 features of communication: meaning, choice, culture, identities, conversation, and nexting. Behavioral blends. Behavioral blends on this graph describes active, outgoing, task-oriented, and the type of people. Also, it describes the passive and reserved people as well. According to the Uniquely You Incorporated, this is expected of me. Driving competent types D and C. This is me. Competent steady doers CSD. C, cautious incompetent. S, steady specialist. And D, determined doers. CSD, me in a nutshell. It states that people expect me to be direct, submissive, and competent, but I sometimes surprise people with my dominant ways. It also states that I can be active, decisive, but sweet, sensitive, as well as compliant. This is very much like me because I don't like to sit and wait for things to happen. I tend to make decisions and move forward with them, but sometimes a little hesitant, looking and seeking assurance. I relate more to C. The C types, I usually want answers and explanations. Most problems begin because of misunderstanding and confusing messages. We've heard many times, it is not what you say, but how you say it. Background and behavioral blend. How does my background and behavioral blend influence my communication style, both positively and negatively? I work in the military. So the positive part about working in the military is working with all sorts of people from different walks of life, different cultures, backgrounds, genders, from all around the globe. The negative part is working with and communicating with those who are ignorant and biased of cultures, attitudes, and religion. I am Jamaican descent. Being of a Jamaican descent, the positive part about that is prejudices was non-existent growing up in my family. I've learned from watching my parents interact with individuals from everywhere, incorporating good habits. The negative part, though, is Jamaicans mostly have the need to be heard and not really listening intently to others' point of view. Background and behavioral blend continued. Conflict. The negative part about my previous marriage was that I was unable to resolve conflict. I did not know how to positively find ways of resolving issues. Now that I've remarried, there is positiveness in my new marriage. I'm able to resolve things peacefully without issues. Background and behavioral blend continued. In the Fireproof movie, Never Leave Your Partner Behind, that reminds me of my current marriage. Because in this marriage, my wife and I were able to resolve any conflict and find ways of resolving it. The issue with Caleb and Catherine in the movie, they had the same problem where they had to find ways of resolving their issues. It relates back to my previous marriage where I was unable to resolve those issues, and it kind of relates back to that movie as well. Interestingly enough, towards the end, they were both able to rekindle their marriage and able to come back together again in a godly fashion and godly manner. In marriage, communicating effectively with my wife is important because husbands and wives need to be on one accord. The positive part about this is it brings peace in the home, less disagreements, better understanding. The negatives is constant bickering, not understanding each other, and putting up walls. Background and behavioral blend continue. By experiencing peace in the home, it brings good communication and understanding. Practicing this at home helps me at work and in all areas of my life. This comes back to a scripture that I would like to read that kind of wraps all this up here. Romans 12:18. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Communication barriers. The most significant communication barrier and or challenge that I have discovered in my interpersonal context. My frustration for not understanding what is being said all of the time. There are times where I am listening but not fully understanding, which at times causes confusion and frustration for both parties. Resources and strategies. Helpful resources that I've discovered and strategic solutions to overcoming my communication barriers and challenges are, according to Hartford, Nicholson, and Sanders, they suggested that family of origin parental divorce or violence is a likely marker of exposure to poor models of couple communication, which leads to specific events like parental divorce or violence because of lack of poor communication. This was something that I experienced in my previous marriage because of poor lack of communication. If people do not try to find ways of communicating with each other, there can be a breakdown somewhere. And that breakdown can get worse if the two people do not come together to try to resolve those issues. According to Letterman, Bodenman, Rudaz, and Bradbury, they basically studied the negative effects of marital quality and satisfaction. They state further studies found that the relationship between economic problems and marital quality is explained through both warm, supportive, and hostile behaviors. But I have an action plan. The action plan. The steps I will take in order to enlarge my conversation and make my overarching goal a reality is, number 1, know the conversation is the relationship. This comes from Stewart, 2012. Number 2, taking turns utilizing Peterson's 2015 The Listener Card. One person talks, the other listens. When the talker finishes, so does the listener, and the card is reversed. Then the person who talked first listens, and the one who listened first talks. Then number 3, utilizing reflective skills. In my conclusion, a memorable closing statement or quote is by Ephesians 4:29. Let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only such as it is good for building up, as it fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear.